Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage, episode 64, Kevin and Orbis. Orbis is all about mechs and mech combat and a wild world inside the Ion Storm, and we'll hear more about it. Today I'm interviewing Kevin about his system and world called Orbis. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Isaac. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, glad to be talking to you. So you're from Germany, so for me it's like 8:40 at night, and for you it's 5:40 in the morning because I'm in California.
Yeah, it's about to be 6.
Yeah, but thank you for talking with me. So first, before we get into like RPG stuff, why don't you tell us who Kevin is outside of RPGs?
Oh yeah, that is a good question to me too. I have worked until a while ago in IT. Lately, there's been some changes in my life, and some of these changes have made me like think about what I want to do, and I've really thought about earlier times of my life when I was more creatively working with things. So now I'm trying to like make my own game system again. It's like this phantom that has been bugging me for several years now. And yeah, so I've been back to my old notes that I got from a friend and doing what I really just need to do anyway. That aside, I've been playing like TTRPGs and similar games for nearly 25 years now too.
Wow.
I think
Okay.
it started around also like I think similar to you around the 2000s.
Hmm. Yeah.
Back then with BattleTech, and which is like on topic with mechs. And then I worked my way through several similar games. I played some Shadowrun 4th edition, I think. And actually D&D I started only in like the 2010s when like Critical Role was very big. I actually stayed away from from D&D for a very superficial reason for a long time because I watched the very old D&D movie. Do you remember that one?
Oh man, yeah, that one's bad.
It was so bad that I kind of like I if I ever thought about playing D&D, I was like I don't really want to do anything like that
Yeah,
because the
whereas
movie looks so bad.
yeah, and you're more into like mech stuff, and a lot of mech media that gets to the U.S. or which I'm assuming also gets to Germany because it's mostly exported from Japan, is good.
Yeah, that's very true. Um, yeah, Shadowrun was kind of like my first sort of fantasy game, and we actually liked some of the ideas in it.
Yeah, but even that's science fiction. So
Yeah, that's true. They're very I love science fantasy, honestly, because
yeah,
you do have spells and stuff. Yeah,
hmm, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, been playing a high level campaign for the last few years now in D&D 5e. We're getting close to the end, at level 19 now.
I was curious if the BattleTech that got you started was that a translated version or was it English?
It was a translated version, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that was big enough to get translated versions. That's cool.
Yeah, a friend of mine had like a bunch of the compendium, like the main compendium, it was called, the main rules,
Hmm.
and then some of the readouts where you can look up the max and such. But yeah, as far as I remember, they were all translated. I do remember there were like one or two translation issues because sometimes you had weapons that were not really in the rules, like uh, slight mishaps.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's hard to do. Um,
Hmm.
I read through the Witcher series recently, and there were definitely points where I felt like there is a translation issue here that just something is not coming across. I don't know what it is, and I can't even find Polish versions to figure it out on my own.
Oh.
Um, yeah, that definitely happens.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to, well, either be perfect about it, and no one has to, or just yeah, especially with something like The Witcher, right? There's probably always a bit of loss of signal when you translate works like that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It actually kind of made me surprised that the series did so well, like that they wanted to make video games and now the TV series based off of it, because it actually felt difficult to read at some points in English.
I think. I only listened to like the audiobooks of it.
Hmm.
But I guess yeah, with an audiobook you're kind of like pushed forward anyway.
Yeah, you can't really linger on like that didn't make sense. Why was it written that way? Um,
Yeah. It's more like a side scroller where it like always continues even
uh,
if yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, earlier we were dancing around this a little bit, but
Hmm.
mech games are important to the world that we're talking about of Orbis and the system of Orbis. Why?
Absolutely, yeah. Why mechs? Honestly, mechs are really, really cool. There are a lot of good mech role-playing games, as I've now learned in the last few months. But
Yes.
for some reason they don't really scratch my itch. I especially had an experience last year with some friends when we were playing Salvage Union, and it's a good game. It's a rules light. It is with it has also a lot to do with mechs. It is definitely made with love. You see a lot of like very cool and interesting ideas and what they were trying to do with the game. But the mech side of things really I was not really satisfying to me as
Mhm.
a BattleTech player at least.
Yeah.
And just I got a little bit more into like also the community side of Salvage Union, and I saw the success they were having and was like very happy for them. But there was this voice slightly inside of my head that was like, if you had like kept working on your game, you might have been here. Like not necessarily from the success angle, but definitely from the you could have something to show for. And that I think was a very big inspiration for myself to like go back into my notes and just like see what I had done and where I could pick up if I wanted to.
Okay. So, if I'm understanding you correctly, so you're looking at Salvage Union. I haven't looked at that one, but from
Mm.
what I've looked at for a lot of mech games, they either seem to focus heavily on the mechs or heavily on the pilots and like the drama, so more like the Neon
Yeah,
Genesis side of stuff instead of the Gundam or Mech Warrior video game kind of stuff. And
yeah,
it seems like what you're trying to do with your system is to have both things represented equally, where like your pilot is important and their mech is also important. So you can have the mechanical, cool robots fighting stories, but also still have the emotions and the pilot is relevant. Um, is that
yeah.
is that right?
Um, yeah, for sure. Like mechanically, or rather, yeah, it started with the mechanics kind of where like I was looking at how much I have about the rules for the pilot character, and then looking at the rules of the mech, and I like switched around a lot and rewrote. And the pilot really only brings in his skills and his uh certain class abilities in a way. While the mech does like all the heavy lifting, literally, with his attributes and similar stats. And but together with this, it becomes like this very composite character where like the mech and pilot are kind of like fusing together in a lot of ways. And I then like thought about this more and put it also into this setting where um the mechs are not like in Titanfall or something where they have their own intelligence or anything or like their own will or something. They're just an extension of the pilot itself. And they really like yeah fuse together in this cognitive neurological way, which I think is really interesting. And it's also the reason why mechs in the setting exist in the first place because they're not just big lumbering war machines. They also have like human-like reflexes, and they can react to threats way faster than a tank or a plane could. So
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation for the defense reactions did seem like, whoa, that's really fast when I was reading through them. But
yeah,
yeah, that is a good way of thinking at it because there's this cybernetic link between the mech and the pilot, so they are basically the same person. They're not really having to flip a switch and a dial and throw a lever and all of that. They're just they move because that's what their experience is.
yeah, for sure. There's a lot, even for the pilots themselves, a lot more to the mechs than kind of meets the eye. in the sense that even the pilots sometimes do things where they would move, or like in the setting at least. The idea is they move their stick to like move an arm closer to an object they want to grasp, and before they even really think about it, the fingers of the mech would just already grab the object because they're thinking about grabbing it. And that's not something that even the pilots really think about. It's just something that the mech does for them, where the computers of the mech basically use the human brain for certain calculations or to do things. Even the pilots themselves don't really think about that anymore. So I think there's a lot of interesting things you can think about how machine and human sometimes interact, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's definitely true for like a lot. Like, I feel like NASCAR drivers probably feel that way, or
Yeah.
skateboarders, professional bicyclists. They just feel like the tool they're using becomes an extension of them, and they no longer really think of it as something separate while they're locked in and using it.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. That's not something I've ever really think about, but you make a good point. It's generally like I guess a lot about Orbis is humans being like tool users, where like that is one of the main things that makes humans humans, that we like have all these tools and the way we use them. And yeah, sometimes with Orbis, there's a lot about like what happens if you like fuse in a way with your tool
Hmm.
and it becomes part of you.
Well, I think it's. I read this when I was in college that people are sort of already cyborgs in a way.
Mm,
Glasses for people that can't see very well. Everyone uses shoes to protect their feet, and those are like sort of exterior cyborg enhancements. So
yeah,
it's just take it a lot further, and you get giant mech suits that can react using your brain instead of a switch.
absolutely. Especially since like the pilots often do have like implants, or not often. All pilots have to have certain implants that connects to their brain, so they
Right.
can actually even run their mech.
Yeah.
Um, and a big thing about Orbis is also like what happens if these tools are like not necessarily taken away, but if the tool part of the human is like hampered with by some kind of sort of malicious force, as you probably read.
Yeah. Yeah. I did see that they had to have resistance numbers for that stuff. It also seemed very obvious that that would be something voltweavers would do, but we'll get to that later.
Hmm?
So I got to look through your system, and it
Hmm?
seemed like the character sheet and like the different like slots for weapons and armor and different mech types seemed very similar to the Mech Warrior Online game,
Oh,
just within an RPG instead. Even the weapon linking thing seemed very similar because you can do that same thing in the Mech
hmm.
Warrior Online where you link. You have like 4 weapon mounts. You put a laser into each of them, and then you link them so you can all fire them together.
Yeah, I think back then it was like weapon configuration or something like this. Yeah. Savage Union had something similar where it's also called like Link or something, where you have two weapons together.
Yeah,
It just would just make sense to do. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm not saying this is like a bad thing or like you're plagiarizing
Hmm?
because like this is this is what the genre is, right? So you're just doing what it should be.
Yeah, there's definitely some steps where yeah, you sometimes just do things that others have done before, but you try to pull it off in your own way.
Yeah, exactly. Um, One thing I wanted to get to with that is that Mech Warrior Online, like I like first person shooters, but I did not like that one because it's a little bit too complicated. Um, Not necessarily the composition of the mechs, like that part is interesting, but the actual play of it is complicated.
Hmm?
And reading through your system, there seems to be a similar like this is a complicated thing where like you have different body parts that have different HP points and you have different break points. I saw that heat was a thing within it, and I didn't even
Yeah.
see the how that's actually managed. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it's just not in the quick rules that you sent to me. But where I'm getting with this is like this game looks a little too complicated for me to have fun with it without doing it a lot to get used to the parts that they're more natural and I'm used to it.
Yeah.
Is that something that is necessarily even a problem though? Like people that like mech games, because like Mech Warrior Online was too complicated for me, but someone who likes that game is okay with that complicated nature, might be okay with the complicated nature of what you're doing. So is this too complicated, or is it the right amount for the target audience?
That is a good question that I have no actual answer for, in the sense that I had some game tests before, and people do have fun with the combat system so far. It is there's a lot of stats and attributes, but generally there's only a few of them ever really used, and some are for like exceptions and is for the future when I implement certain classes. The mech sheet also like does a lot of the work, which is how I wrote it and altered it. Like you can make certain or choose certain options, and it already shows you like some of the rules or inputs some of the data, so you don't have to look it up. But yeah, generally I was going for a more simulationist approach, which means like there needs to be a certain amount of stats and attributes to show you what you can do and such. It definitely is not for everyone, and I had some good talks about that when I like started writing everything, and I was like unsure how to proceed, but a friend of mine I was talking to was like, you need to like think about this. You need to make the game you want to make and you want to play,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
you will probably find still a lot of people and the right people that want to interface with this kind of game in the future.
Yeah. Like if this was simple enough that my 6-year-old daughter could understand it, then it needs to be more complicated. That's too simple. That's an
Yeah,
extreme
maybe.
example, but yeah, I agree. It should be complicated. And if you're really trying to include both the mech and the pilot, I feel like it almost needs to be more complicated than Mech Warrior Online.
Hmm.
Going back to that example, because in Mech Warrior Online, I'm the pilot, so I don't need to simulate that. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So having that included, I think, is also cool.
I would also make the difference in like complex and complicated, because I think with Orbis there's a lot of things that are just that I think from the game testing and so on, they are intuitive. Like what do you do an attack with? Well, you have your primary range stat that you've chosen, so that is it, and then you use your skill of the pilot and do the calculation for that. There's a lot of stats that the mechs have, but once you kind of understand the main gameplay loop, it's just complex. It's not necessarily complicated per se. It's just that you have a lot of options, which is why like yeah, there's a lot to look at on the sheet in a way.
Yeah. I think I mentioned that at some point in the Tales from Elsewhere server that it's okay for a game to have complicated character creation. You usually want to have the actual play of the system be simpler.
Yeah.
So if there's a lot of choices to make, when you have time to make them and there isn't like this sort of immediate pressure, oh, make a choice because someone else wants to play and have their turn, then if you get time to like sit through, look all the options and, make up your mind, or just go with the DM said this one works, then that works better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I would add to that yeah, once you understand like with games like this, Tales of Elsewhere, once you understand like the main gameplay loop, it's pretty easy to make decisions anyway, and to understand what kind of playstyle you wanna achieve, I guess, with your character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I do want to come back to the system later on. But a lot of my other questions about it were sort of like, how does this play into like this part of the setting? So I wanted to go into the Orbis like setting next.
Yeah, gladly.
Yeah, why don't you give us the brief overhead shot of what is the Orbis world?
Oh, brief, right?
We'll get into the specifics with yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so basically in Orbis, humanity is a species with amnesia. They have been an advanced technological species for as long as they can kind of remember, which isn't very long, because they've like something happened and then the Ion Tempest began to exist, which is a very fluctuating, very like weather-like electromagnetical field that seems to be globally present. Not always very strong everywhere, but strong enough to like at the time throw humanity into like a cataclysmic event. And when the setting begins at like year zero, the tempest kind of like mellows out to a degree where like human expansion is possible again. And at that point, the many different new cultures and nations that have like started to exist start to interact again. The Iron Tempest has like reshaped the whole world to a lot. Everything from people assume that like the terrain looked different before the Iron Tempest happened. Because the Iron Tempest it isn't just an electromagnetical energy field, it also can create weird like cold snaps and shockwaves of heat, and it can magnetically charge terrain and such and like make it levitate and change gravity. So in however long time the Iron Tempest was like really raging and changing the face of the planet of Orbis. A lot probably changed about how it looked. And so yeah, at year zero, humanity stumbles back into being able to communicate with each other and begin trade and all this kind of again. By that point, they also noticed that some people have started existing, I guess, or muted maybe to
Mhm.
be able to control aspects of the Iron Tempest. But that brings its own problem because these people draw the Iron Tempest to themselves when they start, like in a way, spell casting. So they're often very on the edge of communities or society. People kind of use them, but they're not very welcome, which is understandable. Um, it also means that the cultures and nations of Orbis are very shaped by the pressures of having like gone from a very technologically advanced humanity to suddenly losing a lot of their technology and having to suddenly work again with maybe more primitive technology, maybe.
Doesn't seem primitive to me, like mechs that have cybernetic links to your brain.
Yeah,
But I get what you're saying, though.
yeah. My imagine is like at year zero, a lot of people had still fusion reactors, or they had still like certain technologies, they had vehicles, they had cities, and so on. But they reached out again and just wanting to work together and just wanting to get back to a certain um, foundation. They were sharing technology a lot with each other, and yeah, in the first century, noticing there were so many frontiers and so many areas that were like unexplored again. People came to the idea, hey, we need like there's these monsters now that are also roaming the countryside and are like attacking settlements and this people had the idea, yeah, okay, we need something like a new kind of weapon system that can like handle being like out there in the frontiers and being able to react to these kinds of threats and problems and all these like little military conflicts that are breaking out. So over like 20, 30 years, people came together, threw together some of their best technology and started making mechs to be able to like tackle all of these problems at once in a way.
Okay, that answers a couple of my different questions because I was curious about like the origin of mechs, if this was like a pre-Ion Tempest thing or not. So it sounds like that was
Mm.
after. Um,
Yeah.
and you also answered my question because like within warfare, mechs, like there's a reason we're not using them now. We could be. It's just
Yeah.
they're so impractical compared to tanks or planes or even drones now. Um, so if you're trying to design something that can be used in all situations because you have limited resources, you need to come up with sort of a Swiss Army knife instead of a kitchen cleaver. Um, then this solution makes sense. Mechs can go places that tanks can't. You can put jetpacks on them so they can sort of fly.
Mm.
And the aeroships will get that in a little bit, that they can kind of really go anywhere. So yeah, I thank you. Great explanation.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, basically, yeah, the people already had tanks and probably like slightly more advanced tanks than we have today. I also had jet planes, although jet planes are a little bit more finicky. So they would to get like out into the wilderness and to explore and also defend. It's nice to have legs to like walk over certain terrain and have troublesome like ground. So yeah, the mechs really make sense to them. Also, they have this from their human physique. They're very similar, or in some sense similar to the behemoths, the monsters of the setting. And it's just motivating for the settlers and colonists to see like a mech punching a behemoth to death when it's like the second time this week that a behemoth come out of the forest and like attack settlements and so on. So it's
Yeah.
overall, it isn't just functionality. It also it looks motivating for humanity.
All right. Cool. So the mechs are kind of put together with technology that existed prior to the Ion Tempest. That's just been sort of repurposed. So I imagine there's a lot of stuff that exists sort of left over that could be adapted.
Yeah, there's a big bandwidth of technologies from stuff that makes sense and then what we come up with to use. But there's also then some more science fiction-y technologies. Like one of the mech cores that gives you mech abilities works a lot with the heat mechanic of the system and does some strange things with that. Then there's like the more no-nonsense approach where like one of the mech cores gives you just a bunch of bony when you want to use missile weapons and so on. And a lot of the technology and the setting people don't even really 100% know about. Like maybe if you've been a mercenary or like adapt with technology for like many decades, you would know all the ins and outs. But there's a lot of technology that's been kind of forgotten about, or they build it, but they're not quite sure what gets into it. So kind of interesting, I guess.
I don't know. I feel like that way about modern weapons, not let alone fantasy ones.
See, it's already a thing.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to jump back a little bit. For trying to talk about like what the world was like before the Ion Tempest to try and give it context. And maybe there isn't really an answer here because of the amnesia event.
Yeah.
So the Ion Tempest comes along and everybody forgets what the world was like beforehand, which is interesting and gives this like mystery that the DM could fill in with whatever they wanted, I suppose. But it sort of indicates there's more of a magic thing going on here instead of a scientific explanation.
Yeah, there's some. So from a more mundane perspective, it's like the event, whichever started the Ion Tempest, was so bad and like probably killed so many people and probably also wiped out so many different settlements or places of knowledge that human history on Orbis could have gotten forgotten to this point as we are now. But yeah, there's definitely like a bit of convenience in forgetting what came before and how like the actual reasons why humanity finds itself where it is. Generally, people in Orbis try to go about like trying to be scholarly and scientific about things, and there's also like two or three big opinions on what the Ion Tempest actually is and how it started. But yeah, people are fighting over it as they would these days if something like that would happen. But magic, yeah, there's one of the big conflicts in Orbis is like secularism and then like a more mundane explanation for things, and then like the more spiritual approach. People give things more a more philosophical maybe approach to what might be going on. It's a big thing in Orbis, and I cannot really speak about what happened before the Ion Tempest. It's like I said, up to the GM themselves to really.
Okay, So it's not
So
so much
that
a magic thing, but more just like, this huge disaster destroys a lot of history, both like physically and in killing the people that remember it, and then you're focused on survival and not necessarily focused on teaching your children who was, chancellor 50 years ago because it doesn't matter anymore.
yeah, there's also even AI constructs like AI entities that would have been around before the Ion Tempest really was a thing, and um, there's probably been some conversations in the setting themselves where people are actually like, "Hey, you like existed for probably several hundred years. What exactly is going on? Do you know anything that we don't?" And even the AI would have been like, "Well, my data centers got like destroyed when everything went down, or they got basically scrapped for parts." So even I am not entirely sure. And there's one AI in particular, Thaya, who's like kind of a historian, and they have a kind of an order of robots and people that are frames in the setting. They're called robots. That are trying to figure out more and more what exactly happened, what came before, and doing like archaeology, especially in like ruined cities and settlements. So that is also a thing that people can, or like play groups can lean into if they want to.
Yeah, I would like to get some more of that later. That is some interesting stuff.
Hmm?
So, this is probably a very obvious question, but Orbis is not Earth, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. All right, that's
No,
fine.
actually, I do know the answer to that, but I don't want to reveal it.
That's fine. It doesn't really matter in the end. People can use your mechanics for whatever they want. They don't have to
Yeah.
use the setting necessarily. So, all right, cool. All right, yeah. So you mentioned a little bit like spirituality and that.
Mm.
Reading through your survey, it seemed like religion has gone into more of this like shamanistic transactional thing. And I guess if this isn't necessarily Earth, we wouldn't have necessarily the same like religious path where Christianity and Islam become mega forces within a lot of the world for how religion is practiced,
Yeah.
that are different than other religions because of their focus on the afterlife instead of the your current lived experience.
Or it is Earth, and maybe like cultural advancements have already maybe left certain old beliefs kind of in the dust, or at least changed them to a large degree. Who knows?
That's another way of thinking of it. I hadn't thought about that part. Yeah,
Hmm?
since this does happen like once we've developed it, if this is Earth, then it's developed a lot more. Yeah.
But yeah, shamanistic is an interesting approach because I do think there would be in the setting there's like probably myriads and myriads of people that have like reverted back to more nomadic lifestyle where they like either live in hordes and caravans of lots of vehicles that like drive through the desert, or maybe they're on like a one big vehicle that drives along. And these people would often also have. You can either have like a very mundane society where they just try to survive and scavenge, and some of the ways you probably have people that are more like their bonds, the way they like as a society work, has a lot of spiritual framework where they have like their own answers and ideas about why the Ion Tempest exists and why they live the way they do, and some of the probably the things that they do. But there's often, or most of the time, there's also a very pragmatic approach to their faith or the way they feel about the world.
Yeah, what you mentioned there about like being nomadic with vehicles sounds pretty interesting. I feel like there's a lot of media that uses that for like apocalyptic settings, Mad Max, and there was that.
Hmm.
Forgetting the name of it. There was that movie that was like about mortal engines. That's what it was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That one was crazy.
There was something else I was thinking of, like with the apocalypse, and then like sort of the destruction of old history and culture and building of new ones.
Hmm.
One interesting media example that I liked for that was Reign of Fire, if you've seen that movie.
Oh, yeah, that one was really cool, honestly.
Yeah, the little Star Wars scene was just like a really interesting way of like seeing how culture can get preserved.
Yeah.
I don't know, for anyone that's not seen it, that the movie is about like a apocalypse caused by dragons, but there's this one part where they're having story time and two of the characters are reenacting the reveal at the end of The Empire Strikes Back, where we find out that Darth Vader is Luke's father, and they're just acting it out with like little what they have, like the little masks that they're making and little swords.
Basically like a theater play,
Yeah,
basically, yeah.
yeah, it's a theater play from what they remember of the movie, because it's a story that they like and they want to tell it to their kids.
Yeah.
So it's this little preservation of that cultural piece that's just kind of cool seeing that. Um, maybe it's been long enough that no longer matters. Like, I'm not sure Star Wars would be necessarily be the story that keeps getting told in the future, but
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars uses the whole or like aspects as it always was said about like some of the heroic myth. So
yeah,
probably not in Orbis, probably not necessarily Star Wars itself, but definitely yeah, the different factions or groups that maybe do some sort of oral preservation of old knowledge will definitely have like little heroic tales of their own where they keep that going. Maybe that is also a motivating factor for some of the player characters when they like leave their nomadic tribe to like become a ronin, which is a mercenary with a mech.
yep, yeah. No, that does make sense. Like the Ronin are like sort of little heroes that go around solving different problems.
Yeah, they have very for being mercenaries with like very dangerous war machines. They have a very romanticized place in the world of Orbis. It's like if you grow up somewhere in a very like sort of boring city, boring in the sense that it's probably a dystopian urban hellscape. You might, as a kid, dream about like actually leaving the city and somehow getting your own mech and then becoming a mercenary to fight on the frontiers.
Well, I think actual Ronin sort of have that same reputation within Japanese culture, where it's like a lot of Chambara films have Ronin as like this, sort of romanticized thing. Oh, they're so brave and honorable going around solving problems. When I think the actual historical event is Ronin are usually just bandits.
Yeah, it's in those media is very similar to Western stories where like this
Oh yeah,
loner comes into a place where stuff is going wrong, which is also something you have in Orbis. They come in, they often don't really want to get involved necessarily, but something happens and they like step in and they often change things for the better. Similar to a lot of Western stories, I feel like.
yeah. A lot of Western movies are actually based on Chambara films.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
true.
Magnificent Seven being the most obvious one.
Oh yeah.
Not here what we're here to talk about though. Well, yeah. So Ronin. So mechs are called Ronin in this. Of course, I'm sure other big
Um,
cities have Ronin, right? Or not? Not the mechs aren't
the
called Ronin. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, the mechs are called armored gear for the most part, which is like a sort of a reference to armored core, I guess.
Yeah.
And the people piloting them, like the different classes, are called Ronin, which is also like a little flicker of memory of people. There's often like terms that people don't really know where they come from, but with Ronin, people vaguely remember they're like some sort of ancient warrior class, and they know it kind of fits what mercenaries are. And yeah, for the most part, mercenaries have like their own subculture and the setting of Orbis, and they have like their own things that they do and how they interact with each other. In contrast to like there's the big factions like the Republic of Mataranga or the Western Concord, they have their own mech armies, but mercenaries probably like live quite different lives from these kinds of soldiers.
Yeah, I was curious about that. A lot of my exposure to mechs is kind of from Fallout, although those kind of aren't mechs. Those are more like Space Marine kind of things. Um,
The power armor in
yeah,
Fallout?
yeah. Like the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout is like trying to collect all the power armor and become this like caretaker of old technology. Not quite the same thing as yours, but like they're trying to get all of
Mm.
it and build an army and reestablish civilization. And I guess I was kind of expecting that to be a big portion of the culture within the world of Orbis. It sounds like it is. It's just that's not where the game's focus is because if everything is functioning right and you can just go to the police when you have a problem and you don't need these fancy heroes to come in and solve something, then they don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. There's different places that seem civilized to us, but they're not like nice to live in. Like the metropolises of the setting, they're not cities per se. They're like this very like sprawls of gigantic futuristic cities that people have a hard time escaping from. And there's probably a lot of injustice and so on happening. So there's a lot of places have police in principle, but similar to maybe a setting like Shadowrun or something, they care more about you the more influence or maybe money or power you have. And
That
yeah,
sounds familiar.
if you're like a little, yeah, if you're a little chum on the street, no one really cares. But you can always make people care with yeah, paying them money as you do with Ronin. Although there's been stories, at least amongst a lot of people, that's probably one of the aspects how they are romanticizing Ronin. That often enough, Ronin come in and help even if they're not necessarily paid, which is an aspect of the mechanics where you can not only get paid with money or something, you could also just get material or maybe like some technological artifact that someone has already found ages ago and then like gives you to protect their town from some issue.
Yeah, I think that plays into like Western archetypes as well. Like a lot of Western stories, it's like some poor dirt farmer that can't pay the cowboy to come fix the problem, but they do it anyways.
Oh yeah, that's Magnificent Seven too, isn't there something about they only really have food similar to Seven Samurai?
Yeah, they're just paid in food.
Yeah.
Most of them die. They don't even get paid. Um, but yes, I wanted to backtrack a little bit. So
Hmm?
before you mentioned like the Ion Tempest when it comes through, like devastating like the land itself and like changing where like mountains and islands and stuff like that is.
Yeah.
And you mentioned behemoths as well. So I was curious about how the Ion Tempest had changed like the animals and the plants. So behemoths, I'm assuming, are one of the more obvious ones of that. But are there like other new things around? Like we're used to four-legged wolves. Are there eight-legged wolves or something like that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of species of creatures that humanity has no like I mean humanity has not a lot of documentation on that anymore anyway. But I feel like very early on when like after year zero when people started exploring and like meeting these behemoths, it would have been very quickly to manage to kill some of them and research them a bit more. Very early on also discovered that they're like genetically modified. Uh, so there's a lot more questions coming up with that. And yeah, there's some one variant I have in my mind is like probably like a gigantic gorilla type of monster with like four arms instead of two.
Hmm.
There's a lot of like yeah, mech-sized, horrible living stuff. And there one of the maybe sad parts that I can reveal about the setting is that a lot of the BMOs are not necessarily evil or they're not necessarily like bad in a way, but they have parts in their brain that like reacts to the Ion Tempest. Like a lot of animals have like this magnetoreception, um,
Hmm.
like organs in their brain.
Yeah, like pigeons can know north that way, I think.
Yeah, turtles too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And BMOs have something similar. And if the Ion Tempest starts acting up, it kind of overloads part of their brain, and then they get really angry, or they basically go berserk. And so some of these like BMOs could actually like live relatively harmlessly somewhere, at least if you like stay away from them. But once the Ion Tempest is in a certain area more active, they start to become more aggressive and actually need to be taken care of.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I feel like there's aggressive animals that people don't like, even without a giant storm making them be even
Yeah,
nastier. Like, the reason that wolves are almost extinct in a lot of places, and tigers and bears and stuff, is because they're dangerous, so people killed them.
yeah. We've here in Germany, we have wolves finally settling back in after being basically like driven off for centuries.
Yeah, same in America. I don't know if they're ever going to go back to Britain, since they eliminated them like hundreds of years ago, where like the last wolf was slain. It's like this big event.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if they could even get there. Probably not, right?
I mean, they must have gotten there at some point, but yeah, like if they wanted to do a reintroduction, it's not clear that the current ecosystem needs them, since it's already adapted to not have them for hundreds of years.
Yeah, yeah. Everything in basically human hand. That's true.
Yeah. Okay, so the behemoths are the big ones, and they go crazy when the Ion
Mm.
Tempest is there, but lots of different kinds. So it's not like there's the you can point at a creature and necessarily say it's behemoth, besides it just being big.
Yeah, there's an even bigger variant that are called Colosarks,
Uh-huh.
and Colosarks are like kaiju sized.
Ooh,
Their
cool.
Beamos can sometimes live in packs, so if you like get their attention, you will have to deal with several of them. And Colosarks are usually, or no, they're exclusively singular entities that just roam certain places. They're luckily most often away from bigger settlements, but that's only because they already destroyed the settlements that would have been close to them.
Sounds right.
And they're usually like a massive threat that has to be like taken care of by like either a full faction or like several factions coming together. And for Orbis themselves, there will probably be like a raid boss in a way that might get interesting. And yeah, the BMOS will be like mechanically speaking. I'm really looking forward to writing the rules for them further. We had some game tests where BMOS showed up and it was fun to fight them at like basically um yeah, not just seeing Max punch BMOS, but also just rip off arms of them or like shoot off arms or something so they couldn't continue to like scratch the mech apart
Oh, that's
or
funny.
slice into them.
I didn't think of using like the same mechanics where you're still damaging like parts of them that way, but that totally makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, they have some of the mechs that have like these 5 hit zones: left leg, left arm, right arm, torso. The BMOs would get similar hit zones. And then, for instance, one of the BMOs was they were called rust eaters, which are like big insectoid things that eat like metal to survive somehow.
Hmm.
And one of them has like an abdomen hit zone that, as long as they have it, they can shoot acid at mechs. But the moment it explodes, they start bleeding out, but they become more angry because of it. They lose like their acid spit ability, but at the same time they become like they get a bonus to their attacks. So it's like have to do like a calculation. Do you want to like deal with the ranged attacks of it, or do you want to like deal with an angry gigantic insect coming for your mech?
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, I look forward to like actually writing a full kit where a GM could like select from different qualities and abilities that a creature, or like mutations that a creature could have to make like their monster of the week for their Ronin group.
Oh, that'd be cool. So I can throw on like a scorpion tail onto a giant gorilla.
Hell yeah.
All right. And something else you put in your survey was apostles, which aren't quite modified anything. That seems like something that's just like pure Ion Tempest. Talk a bit about those?
Yeah, the apostles named as a reference, I think, to mostly Berserk, certain Berserk enemies, if anyone reads that manga. Um, they're intelligent entities that It's super rare. There's only a few really documented, and like the 250 or so years that the setting is now has proceeded, and they are beings of tempestual energy, uh, often in a vaguely humanoid shape. They can appear in anything from like slightly above human size to like mech sized, and they sometimes just randomly seem to appear, uh, create trouble for a whole region they're in because they do things. The Ion Tempest starts acting up around them, and sometimes people even like go and sort of worship it, which is where the apostle name comes from.
Okay.
Basically, them going into like a settlement instead of destroying it, people just basically like give up and then start sort of like doing its bidding. And yeah, they're even able to communicate to people, and no one really knows what they are. But they are like strong enough to take on mechs alone by themselves, so they're very like they use chain lightning attacks and whatever elements they're made up of. They have this like slightly, I guess, angelic characteristic to them. Not the nice kind of angelic, but more the biblically accurate. They have some weird goals and ideas of their own.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so sort of a otherworldly being that people don't understand, but maybe respect quite a bit.
Yeah, and what they are, I have a good idea of, or rather, I know what they are, of course. And probably gonna be revealed later on, and like if the story or the timeline ever progresses, people might be able to figure out what is actually going on with those.
Okay. So voltweavers, you mentioned them earlier, and we got a little bit
Hmm.
about them. Do they have any connection to the apostles, or is that more like a separate thing?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I've written down that like in those instances where World Weavers faced apostles, they were like a 90-10 uh, swap of reactions to them. 90% of the time, the World Weavers got like into an berserk state where they were trying their best to like kill the apostle as fast as they can. Just like having like knowing themselves that something is off about their behavior, but not being able to really do much about it.
Sounds very
And then
similar to
like
the
10% of
behemoths you were talking about.
yeah, yeah, it's nearly like it's not a good thing to have your brain connected to the Ion Tempest.
No.
And then in 10% of the time, the Voltweaver basically immediately switched sides and fought alongside the Apostle against maybe even their old allies. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, there's definitely some polarizing effect that Apostles have on Voltweavers, and again, playing a little bit into the name. But what exactly the connection is, yeah, that's also something that might be revealed
Okay.
sometime in the future.
Cool. Cool. I want to switch over to talk about like the technology, probably starting at the top with like the big AIs you were talking about before.
Hmm.
So these are AIs that existed from like before the Ion Tempest. Is that right?
Yeah, they seem to be like living artifacts in a way of what humanity achieved before.
Okay. And my assumption is that most computer infrastructure and all the things that feed into it, like you need power plants, you need power lines, you need um, this is 250 years later, so you probably need to replace all of the components over that time.
Hmm.
Um, so that whole like supply chain for producing those needs to be maintained sort of internally because it's not like it can an AI never necessarily has access to like a silicon mine over there or whatever.
I
Uh,
mean, a lot of the AI would have like actually over the time of the cataclysm and then like the times after the cataclysm when things progressed, they would have probably a lot of them took power and actually like made sure they can continue to exist by
okay.
like forcing the meat bags to do their bidding.
Okay. Um, fair enough. So that's how these ones survived, is by taking control, doing what they needed to do to preserve themselves.
Yeah, some of them are also like just very, very useful for the people, like an AI in a city probably being able to run a bunch of calculations and tell the human politicians or the human leaders how to best tackle certain problems. So they already had like some prestige with the people leading factions and so on. And then there were others, like I said, that would probably have taken over when they noticed, oh wait, this is actually very lethal for me.
Yeah. Even something just like weather prediction is pretty useful in a lot of people's lives.
Oh yeah, yeah. When yeah, life gets back to survival, and you have to like grow food in cities on like rooftops and on balconies and so on. Yeah, definitely.
So moving down a bit, you have the sort of work robots that are called frames.
Hmm?
You want to explain how those fit into your society?
Yeah. So when humanity reconnected over all of Orbis and exchanged technologies again, automation was already in some locations, at least automation was already a thing. So at least some of the cities still had factories with like artificial workers and workforce, which are called generally frames. Frames in the setting go everything from like small, very small, like autonomous little machines to human shaped kind of and human sized, and then even like slightly bigger than that, where auto frames are like kind of combat robots or big heavy industrial robots. Most of them are very like human shaped or human sized rather, and they kind of fill in the what Star Wars has like as droids is what frames are in Orbis, where they perform a lot of menial tasks and a lot of labor for factories or for people or like on in warehouses and so on. And yeah, generally like if you were to like just walk into a settlement or like into a big city in Orbis, you would definitely see a bunch of robots here and there just doing some of the work that people would otherwise be doing.
All right. And are they similar to the droids in Star Wars, where they sort of some of them have personalities and it feels like others don't?
Yeah, very much so. Like most of the frames are basically made by having like this robotic body and giving it a virtual intelligence, which humans can still actively make. They cannot make the full AI entities that exist in the setting, but they can make or basically they copy paste virtual intelligences into complex computers, and that's how you like give a frame some intelligence to do their work a little better.
Hmm.
And it seems that the longer a frame is active and like works and also gets like slightly exposed to the Ion Tempest, some of their computer systems are set to like break down a little bit, and then they begin exhibiting quirks and more custom behavior, like seemingly personalities, just by being a bit damaged.
I think the same thing is true in Star Wars, actually, where it's talked
Yeah,
about
you
a little
don't.
bit like they wipe droids' memories occasionally to remove the personality.
Yeah, and R2D2 is very very characteristic because his memory has not been wiped in forever.
Yep. And C-3PO, I think, gets wiped at the end of every trilogy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that might be a thing.
Okay. I wanted to move to mechs compared to frames a little bit because it
Hmm?
seems like you could have a robot mech where you don't need a person in it, or you could have one that's connected digitally instead of the pilot being inside of the mech. Um,
Hmm.
is there something that's preventing that from happening?
Yeah, and of course it's the Tempest. So there are auto frames, so-called auto frames, and I think they're like war robots, but they're only used in limited capacity, and there's no like flying auto frames and so on, like not how we have drone warfare
Hmm.
and so on.
Yeah.
Um, the Ion Tempest interferes a lot with robots, so if you have like menial work frames in a warehouse, you still have to have some handlers that always look out that like especially if the Ion Tempest works up that or acts up that they continue to do what they should do or being switched off if something goes wrong. And in the same way, auto frames are used most often in a defensive way. They're more like used to protect certain places where you can always make sure they can be like pulled out of combat or pulled out of service to like be maintained. And even at best, they don't quite match up to what a human machine hybrid can do, which is basically an armored gear.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it needs that human brain, like that human sort of creativity, impulsivity to like actually bring a war machine to like 100% effectivity. And it's also like a mech can technically, if you give a mech pilot enough proviant and so on, they could basically like go on forever as long as they get like repairs and so on. War robot would eventually like just break down and not work anymore or do some really strange behaviors to keep alive, let's say.
Okay, gotcha. And the sort of digital connection component doesn't work because the Ion Tempest is messing up long range communication.
Yeah, there's messages on Orbis like take a long while to like go around the whole planet. There's still radio and radar, but they're like kind of neglected technologies. Where radio is still used a lot because you can make it very cheaply.
Yeah.
But it's one of the first things that goes out when the Tempest stacks up. Um, People fix a lot of these issues with lasers, where um, laser communication is a big thing. So you like point a laser from one point to another, and you can build up a somewhat immediate connection between these points. And so one of the ways that more civilized areas are connected up by these balloons or balloon-like flying objects that like point lasers at each other, so you have like communication lines open.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're doing like semaphore or Morse code or something, or is this an actual like real
Um,
thing?
Laser communication is like basically it's like I think speed and complexity like the internet. Like you can communicate all kinds of ways just with a laser. You just have to like um, yeah, point it directly at like some receiving part of the electronics, and then you can give them like you send over very quickly a lot of information. So it would just not be Morse code or anything. It would like literally be sort of the internet or like open connection line.
Okay.
But yeah, that does not span the whole of Orbis, and oftentimes you need to like give um, some news or some information, like fill some hard drives on an aeroship, and then like send it over to an area far away that needs to get some news or something.
All right. So we've been you talking about a bit of like this or bigger civilizations. And you
Hmm?
mentioned I think two of them in the survey. Um, do you have an idea for like the sort of political landscape of Orbis at this point? Or or is it even important to understand the setting from that perspective, or is it just like, there's big civilizations and then places outside of
Um, yeah, if you what you just said was like yeah, big factions with like slightly civilized area or with more civilized areas, and then the frontiers. You already know most of what's important for the setting. You can, of course, build your character with the idea in mind of like one of the using one of the established big factions, like for instance the Republic of Mataranga or the Western Concord or something. But it's not. There's not much like. At least I haven't like world built enough yet
them?
to have like a big complex Game of Thrones like political landscape. There's like the factions have like certain issues with each other. Some are more allied with each other, and they all like show have their different little perspectives on why they should be the one to have like more influence on the world, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, like the world of Orbis? Next, I wanted to move on to more like the ronin and the airships component.
Yeah, I think one of the big and maybe slightly important things that players will probably like face a lot is the remnants of Sevastograd, and like basically where the setting starts off is like 20 or 30 years after their own Battle of Endor type of situation,
Mm-hmm.
where yeah, similar to the to how it was in Star Wars, there was a kind of empire that shattered, and but they're not completely gone. They still have a lot of little holdouts here and there, and they're often up to no good. They're like warlords reigning over certain areas, often in the frontiers also. And funnily enough, oftentimes or like sometimes, one of the other big factions would like make a task force, send them out to fight one of these holdouts, and then they would even like join up with these people, which is unlucky, but not historically not unheard of. So yeah, Sevastopol is definitely, or Sevastograd, as I'm now calling them, they're definitely like a high risk, high reward thing for players. Where if you know there's like a faction like this in your area, you can probably get some nice technologies or maybe even new mech parts off of them. But they are often also very like battle hardened problems to face.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You said high risk, high reward, which is what makes games fun. So
Yeah.
okay. Well, yeah. So ronin and airships, or arrow ships. Sorry.
Hmm?
The ronins have their armored gears that also have sort of like a charging and repair station in an aeroship. And the aeroship also lets the armored gears go around to different places and solve problems. And over here in one country, and then we got a call on the border of this country. We're going to go over that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to walk in your jumbo mech through the wilderness, which is no fun.
Yeah, it would probably take like weeks, even if you walk all day.
Yeah, not known for being fast in any media representation. So yeah, give us your take on the aeroships. What are they like?
Yeah, aeroships are the workhorse of human reconnection and like the industrial revolutions that like followed the year zero. People here and there, while most of the like really advanced technology was gone or scrapped or whatnot, um, or lying around in some ruin, there were a lot of people that stashed anti-gravitational like devices and objects, and they would basically like make these ships that are basically just gigantic cargo ships or yeah, ships of similar means or conception, and with some jet engines strapped to these gigantic hulls, they were able to like fly relatively fast and relatively safe. So they became a thing in the setting very quickly, and they transport people and cargo a lot. But obviously, very quickly on, they were also like armored and armed to fill in a military role. And on the set of Ronin, they're basically like mobile bases where they carry their mechs inside of them. They carry their loot. They have some of the crews that Ronins also will have, where you have like several crews of like extra repairmen or maybe some soldiers that guard like your camps or whatnot. So they're like mobile homes with some military use for the players.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not well liked. There's a big guild in the setting, and fitting to the Sevastograd thing. In the times of Sevastograd and like the war going on, there was a lot of aeroship to aeroship violence that like lowered the numbers of aeroships anywhere on Orbis. So there's a guild sprang up, or maybe just existed before and then still exists, and they're trying to like disarm all the aeroships because they want to use them for industrial or more friendly transporting logistical means instead of warships. But players can have an aeroship with like depending on what kind of group of Ronin you want to play, you can have an aeroship that has like a big gun on it that can actually like give you some support fire in certain battles.
You read what my next question was going to be.
Yeah. And in that case, you have like the Skyfarers Guild that will always be like, hey, can you not, please, we give you some money, put that gun away.
Protection money.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool. Do you feel like there's any mech media that's like a particular inspiration for Orbis?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, in Battletech, for instance, on the whole, it's a hard sci-fi world. The mechs are mostly just like weapons carriers in a way. They don't have like, from what I remember at least from like 20 years ago, they didn't have approaching the stats and means that armored gear and Orbis have. A lot of the mechs that I was exposed to were Armored Core from that franchise, and they also don't quite fit. So yeah, it's interesting. I just like took a lot of the ideas and media I was exposed to and just mashed into something where you can have an adventurous journey inside a mech. I'm not too sure I know any media where this holds true. I guess maybe Breakblade, which is like a manga anime.
Okay. You mentioned Berserk before too.
Yeah, I don't have any mechs in there though.
Yeah, no, it's not a mech one.
Yeah. But there's like one dude that is like the size of a mech, but
It's a great one, yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's start talking about the system again.
Hmm?
Why don't you walk me through character creation?
Yes. The system and mechanics I definitely have fully fleshed out yet.
Okay.
um
Yeah, maybe you're not at
no,
that point. What is something you'd like to share then?
oh no, I have some I definitely am currently working up to version 0.6 at the time of this recording. Which means that some of the classes have their signature abilities and so on. So basically, in the game of Orbis, the pilot side of things, you have expertise grades. Currently, they work similar to levels. So just instead of calling it like level 8 or something, you're like a hardened veteran also.
Mm-hmm.
With every level up, you get a number of skill points. The skill points can be, or the skill points are separated by primary combat abilities, secondary combat abilities, and then non-combat abilities. These are like the primary ones are of course everything having to do with your mech. Secondary ones are like if you want to have for whatever reason a handgun or want to be able to use it, or if you want to like be able to fly like a plane or something to that degree, all this kind of stuff. Aside from that, you get better in like the pilot type or class you're specializing in, and you also now and again get like talent points, and the talent points you can choose to like use in a more yet it's used to round off your character in a way. Like you can with talent points you will be able to invest in anything from your character being like a cook that like cooks for his party and gives them meals, which will help with certain roles, interestingly. To like stuff to like becoming even more focused on your mech, becoming like an ace pilot in certain ways, or you get like some cultural linguistic kind of like it's kind of similar to 5e feats where you can still level them up so you can get like extra benefits if you spend more talent points on something. On the other side, I kind of want to have like also more RPG aspects with the character creation. So I'm thinking about putting in certain traits that you have to play out a certain aspect of your character, and you get like maybe at a situational disadvantage, but you overall you can repeat roles or something to the degree. I definitely want to like. I remember you probably too remember these old RPGs that often had some system that was called drawback of flaws
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
quirks, where like you get like your character is afraid when he sees fire, so you have like a disadvantage on that. But at the same time, you get a slot that is like a quirk that gives you some positive. This is kind of where I want to lean into a little bit. Maybe like one of each is enough to make like hopefully like your pilot more interesting or characteristic.
Yeah, I think Pathfinder had a good representation of that. It called them edicts and anathemas, where an
Oh,
edict was something like your character has to do, and anathema is something that your character never does. Um,
oh,
so you could have like an edict of help children in need, and a sort of opposite anathema would be never harm children.
oh yeah.
So that would be an interesting way of presenting that, but that gets more into sort of you kind of choose what you want, and it's just part of your character, so it's less concrete than like scared of fire and knowing what
Yeah,
that's
no,
worth.
yeah, it sounds more like something to hold you to a certain behavior with your character instead of something mechanized by the system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Soviet Union had a good approach where they use like a personal quote or personal motto, and then also like a personal keepsake. And by like invoking them, you could get to reroll like a roll, but it has to be situational, like it has to do something to do with your character. And I think that's also
That's cool.
was generally a cool idea. I will not completely adapt that, but that's definitely like a good way to go about it. Yeah.
Do you feel like, and I guess the people you play tested with too, do you feel like there's a good balance of like role play and combat, or have you not really gotten to that point yet?
We have not gotten to the point yet, but interestingly, I'm currently writing the first big test scenario where the players also have to do non-combat activities together to like test that out. Because the even outside of your mech, you will be able to like engage in some things to do to do some meaningful non-combat tasks for your party, and maybe get some extra um, either items or gear, money, or just generally like have fun with the rest of your party, I guess. That's what I'm writing on currently, and that is gonna come up very soon when I finish some of the base classes or pilot types that are gonna get into the game.
Cool. Related question: you'd mentioned the keepsake and that how that can like sort of come in mechanically and give you like an extra bonus or something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sort of meta currency like that? Because I feel like a lot of mech media that cares about the pilots does have this sort of like they give it like an extra push and they can make it through. Like they're sort of like hold together, baby, and then the mech lets them do that last big laser blast that defeats the bad guy.
A little bit like Han Solo when every time something goes wrong with the Falcon, he like pats it and it's like, "Come on, baby, you can do it."
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Um, yeah, that's something I do definitely want to like. I think there's also like different tropes that you can probably like weave into the narrative.
Oh,
And
definitely.
yeah, that is something that I would like to include with the quirks flaws system if I like can be able to adapt it. That's definitely I want to. There's currently no big push, I guess, mechanic for pilots.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's definitely something that could be cool if done right.
Yeah. And usually that kind of meta currency thing can be layered on top of whatever you already have. So yeah, I think that's fine to leave that for 0.9 or whatever for whatever version.
Yeah, with what I have, like there's certain attributes I can probably also use for pilots to push themselves, but it would probably be way more interesting to actually make that an aspect of your character.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe split it up into like something. If you're inside of combat, or your character is more like based towards violence, so his push rolls work more inside of combat, or he's a more well-rounded person, so his push rolls work more outside of combat. There's definitely some ways to do that, yeah.
So the actual mechanical resolution, do you feel like you're pretty set on where that is at this point?
Yeah, speaking of, we've not really gotten into that too
Yeah.
deep, I think.
Yeah.
It's a
You saw where I was
D100
actually going
system.
with that question. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, so the game is a D100 system. How the rules work is basically your pilot will assemble a score, or your player character will assemble a score of an attribute and a skill, and that will be compared to a number that, for instance, if it's a task, depending on the complexity, it has a score itself, and you compare these two numbers, and if they're equal, for instance, the chance of success is 50%, so you roll 50 or below to succeed, and when it comes to, for instance, combat, you use your max attribute and your pilot's skill in, for instance, shooting, and do that against the defense and defensive attribute and skill of the target you're shooting at. I think that's very efficient way of going about it, and there's a lot of with the D100. I feel like on in a table setting, I would roll that with like two differently marked D10s or something to the degree. I've heard it's a little boring, but I do actually like it. And I mean, there's a lot of there's some chaotic modifiers, so like you roll some extra smaller dice to maybe push your results in one way or the other. And there's charged and supercharged rolls where on certain very noticeable results, there's a special effect that happens. Like for instance, if you roll like a 44, 50, 50, 55, 66, and so on.
Yeah, those ones looked like that was a nice way of doing criticals where you can sort of get more of them, and it's not just roll super low. It's like you can get it at other points, which is I think it was interesting.
Yeah, that's I was thinking about it. It's also, I think, intuitive. On one hand, you have this like simulationist approach where like, oh yeah, you have a 45% chance, and then you roll, and then you have to like actually see if the number is below 45. But with something like these repeating numbers and so on, I feel like most people very quickly pick up on, oh, I rolled a 77, so that's something good for me.
Yeah, no,
So I think
it's
that's good.
very easy to notice and do something with. Might be harder to code into like an online virtual tabletop, but that's a later problem.
Yeah, that's a problem for future Kevin.
It's a little more difficult, but it's definitely doable. That's not a big concern.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do with the D100. It's also just efficient. Like for instance, with attack rolls, you can have both the result of like, did my attack hit or not? You can also have the result of, is it like a critical hit with like a charge roll, and you can immediately see where an attack goes to. Like if you attack a different another mech, you roll like a 37. The 7 in the number tells you like what hit zone that is. For instance, for the 7, it's I think it would be the right arm or something. So you can glean a lot of information from like just the D100 or 2D10 as we would probably use them.
Yeah.
And yeah, then for instance, when it comes to, since it is a very combat heavy game, you have a lot of ways that the weapons change the roll a little bit. My favorite rule is rapid fire, where you have like a gigantic minigun or something to the degree that shoots really fast, but small, weak attacks. So roll a bunch of d6s to it, and then, for instance, if your attack would not hit, you can look at the d6s at the result of it and see if it like pushes past into the success threshold. If it does, only the like ones, like in Orbis you want to roll always lower, so ones is better than sixes. Yeah, and if you push it into the threshold of success, the ones would still deal some extra damage, while usually you have like the range of 1 to 5, but that would deal damage if it was already a success. So I want to like give the players a feeling that the weapons actually are meaningfully different. Like firing a rotary autocannon is not the same as firing like an electric beam at your target, or just firing like a normal cannon with like modified ammunition on board of it. So
Yeah.
there's ways to do that are not super complicated.
Yeah, I think that's also very important for a mech game where there's a lot of focus on, building your mech the way you want it to be and it sort of being
Mm.
an extension of yourself. You want to have those choices matter. Exactly. So,
Yeah, totally. That is something that I was missing from a lot of games. And yeah, overall, that is where like my wish comes in to like, yeah, make players feel if they like play your character, your mech, you actually feel like you have this gigantic war machine with different weapon systems. And some of the what do you notice with the game testing? Some of the systems come together in like unexpected but very fitting ways. We had like a fight the other day with my friend Joe. Shout out to her. Um, where I shot her mech with like one of those gigantic rotary autocannons, and she had an arm shield on her mech, and the arm shield actually like managed to deflect these like smaller bullets from the minigun. There's like a built-in resistance that the arm shield has, and it like kept the damage of the or it soaked up all the damage of that minigun. But then I shot her with a plasma gun, and it like went through the shield and actually hit her mech. So it's what you actually would expect, kind of. Well, not really in real life because we don't have plasma guns, but it's kind of what you would expect from seeing like a fight scene where certain attacks can be blocked in certain ways, but others can't.
that's cool. And it's actually really neat that you have a system that's already having the type of interactions that you can imagine from a mech game where someone's shooting with a machine gun and they switch to the plasma rifle in their other arm, and yeah.
Yeah, where you can basically like see things that would happen in Mac Media or something, and it's also nice that it came together in a more natural way. So yeah.
So the system to me seemed like a combination of like the basic role playing with like the D100s and having, you want to roll under target number kind of thing. Not exactly the same thing because you have more of this like 50-50 approach to it, which basic has too, but just a different representation of that.
Hmm.
And then you also had the forged in the dark side for the downtime stuff. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so even back then when we were playing BattleTech, like my friends and I, we would often lean into like activities aside from like running around in our mechs and shooting stuff. Uh, Back then there was like no big mechanized part of it, and we would just be stumbling around having fun as it is in a lot of role-playing games. I've been playing some Blades in the Dark for the past few months, and it is a really cool system. And I had like started using escalation and countdown dice now for some of the character mechanics and for the pilot types you have. And I noticed that like the clocks that you have in Forge in the Dark are very similar to if you take a dice and like you put it onto like if it's a complex task you want to do, if it's a 6 or an 8, and then you for every step you do, you like lower the number of the escalation or the countdown. That if you reach 0, the task is fulfilled. And there's a lot of tasks you can technically do outside of combat and Orbis. One of the examples I gave you is like rousing the choir, which is my idea, for instance, the ronin would find some seemingly abandoned station somewhere, and they really have to like do either they have to like send out a message really far, or they know that this installation has some information that they will need, so they have to like open a connection. So in an installation, there's a bunch of virtual intelligences that work like just menial workers for the corporation or faction that is running that place. And then you have like the approach you could try to persuade the virtual intelligences into doing your bidding. You could try to hack them. You could try to like do some other like for them unforeseen approach to make them do as you want. And that is then basically like a D6, and the whole party works together to like um, perform the task. But there's already with me going over the concepts of what players can do. There's a lot you can actually do that still is meaningful and fitting to the setting. There's, for instance, if the party reaches a metropolis, like to find arms dealers and to like get a good deal on tech that they are trying to sell, or get like a good deal on equipment, new equipment they want to buy. Like making new contacts can also be done with the countdown dice. And to my slight surprise and also like contentment is that the some of the mechanics for the pilot types also work pretty well for outside of combat situations. So to give an example, the frontline pilot is called the Dragoon. He has an escalation dice, so as long as every turn he shoots at his target, he gets a little better at like actually hitting them. Like his his escalation dice is increased by a charge, and with every charge he gets a percentage on hitting the enemy next time again. If you take that idea and that approach to non-combat situations, I make it so that I lower the dice from a D8 to a D4, and as long as the Dragoon like runs around with his party and like fulfills rolls like skill checks for these tasks, the escalation dice also increase like they would in combat, so they're like locked in on whatever the party is trying to do. And yeah, there's ways you can like also spend these charges that you build up, and then, for instance, you could use what is called measured fury, which turns the success charges into critical success. So you can actually like try to gamble on if you're like trying to get a good deal on, for instance, gear, you could like try to gamble on it and turn these charges into a critical success and actually like maybe make like a connection that lasts the rest of the campaign or something, because then you have like an arms dealer somewhere that really knows you and so on.
Ooh.
So there's some interesting ways how like the kind of combat abilities can still be used outside of your mech.
It's kind of neat.
Yeah, I think that would definitely help a bit with the long term, and yeah, it's not just mech combat, but heavily mech combat part of the game.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've made through all the questions I wanted to ask. Did you want to present anything else about the system or the setting?
I guess one thing is, and if this, if the episode comes out, I will continue to work on the setting. Of course, I will, since I've like experience as a game master in D&D for so many years now. I already know that I can sprinkle in some hints and ideas into the setting that will pay off in a few years, probably. Because I will keep working on this thing. This is like the even if maybe not many other people will ever pick it up, I will definitely make Orbis into something I will play as my next big thing with some friends over the next few years. And yeah, I will sprinkle in some parts into the setting that people can pick up on later and see where it like influence where the setting is going. And I think that's, at least from a creative perspective, for me, that's hopefully really I enjoyed. Hopefully that's gonna be for other people really cool if they see like wait a minute, looks like some of these aeroships kind of like moved a lot further than is normal in the setting very quickly. That's kind of weird, and it doesn't mean anything to you saying it right now,
Hmm.
but it'll pay off in a few years. People will be like, oh, that was a big thing actually. So there, it's a bit dorky to say, but there's a lot of things that can be hinted at and then later paid off in a satisfying way. And yeah, it's not substantial that I can say, but uh, I'm sure it'll be fun.
Yeah, that does sound like it. That kind of reveal as a DM is really nice to do. So I can imagine it's also nice as a game designer to have those same moments.
Yeah, I think if you probably have you game mastered
Yeah,
a lot? Yeah, you probably had like some nice twists or turns that you could throw at your players and everyone going like, "Wow, what just happened?"
yeah, exactly. So some of the best time for the players too when they get to those points.
Absolutely. So yeah, Not much that I can or that sticks out to me currently. I'm also yapped a lot about thing. I'm really looking forward to having players interact with certain AI beings. I always like robots and the setting, and then where the AI is not just a robot; it's like a gigantic consciousness spread out over several computer rooms and so on. Yeah, there's a bunch of things I'm looking forward to.
All right, well, cool. Thanks, Kevin. Before we finish up, do you want to spout a little bit of DM advice for other people?
Um, oh boy, me advising other people. I would say a lot of people are sometimes, or what I can see with new GMs in D&D and what I've seen from Blades in the Dark, people are sometimes a little afraid to let players just kind of do their thing or feel powerful, and that seems to sometimes intimidate some of the fresher, newer GMs. But I think that's actually like a really good thing. I still remember like one of my monk players surviving a like a disintegration or attempt by like a lich, and they feel you feel a little powerless because your disintegration failed, but the player really feels good about themselves. And I think a lot of what's fun about GMing and playing with people, playing these kinds of games with people, is to make people feel like heroes in their story. So yeah, don't be afraid if a certain character type or a certain class or whatnot in your games feels a little overpowered. Don't be afraid to give people the feeling of actually being powerful and be heroes in their own stories.
That's nice. Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, our job as DMs is to lose.
In a way, yeah, that's true. You very quickly learn to not be too connected to you to the NPC. You take a lot of time writing something.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Kevin. It was really good getting to talk to you. I loved learning about Orbis and the mech stuff. It sounds really cool, and yeah, I hope we in maybe a few months or a year or two that it's something that can get really big.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Isaac. I'm very glad to like get the opportunity to come on and yap about this passion of mine. I hope it finds some interested people out there, or even just makes people think, hey, if this dork can like start writing his own thing or work on his own thing, maybe I can do that too. So if you're listening and have some cool ideas out there, maybe try to make them a thing.
Hope you enjoyed listening to Kevin talk about Orbis and mechs and all the cool stuff there. If you'd like to learn more, you can check out Kevin's Discord, where there's a link in the episode notes, or you can check out Kevin's Blue Sky account once he starts actually using it, because Orbis is still very early in development, so there isn't a lot of updates to give publicly yet. The Discord has plenty of playtest files, though, so check it out. In other news, one of our past guests, Peter from Tales from Elsewhere, this is episode 41, Peter is launching a Kickstarter for his game, Tales from Elsewhere, and the first setting book for it, Clock World. There's a link for that in the description. And I also have the audio file for the trailer that he made for it, so we'll listen to that. And there's a little bit more of the interview with Kevin afterwards that wasn't quite about his world. It was about mine that I've included after the trailer. So stick around to hear that. Thank you for listening.
Elsewhere ain't something that you know. It's something that you feel. You feel it down in the pit of your belly when you stare into the starless night. When you close your eyes in the small hours and the dark thoughts come clawing in. That's elsewhere whispering to you. It's what your sins feed and where your nightmares are born. It's that feeling of being watched as you walk through the woods. When you're standing at the edge of the cliff, something tells you, just one more step. Any of that ruminate on it too long, gamble with more than their sanity. But they're very sacred soul. All you really need, Ken, is that elsewhere friendly. and it ain't from round here.
And the only other thing really is like your setting you said, or is written as Cimmeria, but I said had nothing to do with like the Conan setting, right?
No. Samaria historically was one of the tribes like the Hittites in like the east and like Asia.
Oh.
They were based around, I think, northeast of the Black Sea. And then when the Greeks started writing about them, Samaria also became sort of like this fantasy place because it was like one of the furthest east locations they knew of.
Yeah.
So it became like this, oh, that's where all the dragons and goblins live in some Greek stories. My campaign is based on Greek myths, so that's where that comes from.
Wow.
And Robert Howard, when he was writing the Conan stories, had the same inspiration, so he took the name Samaria and used it. So we're both going from the same source, but no, it's not inspired by Conan more than any other D&D story is.
Gotcha, interesting. Yeah, because that's the only way I've ever really heard Samaria in context. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I write about my setting on my website. Trying to put together everything into a setting book by forcing myself. I have to write something once a week to have my blog article go up.
Oh.
So I actually did do a piece about that where I was adapting the actual history of Samaria to represent however that functions within my campaign world. Because it's set in a fictionalized version of Earth, so I still wanted to have some like real events. So I did include those portions.
Is it like a historical and mythological mix? So there's like real tribes, but also there's Greek gods, or how does it work?
Yeah, I use the Greek gods as the main pantheon for the system. And the Cimmerians are heavily modified from what they are in history. And there's been occasional crossover with like real historical events. A big one was during one of the events, the PCs hired the Spartans to fight for them.
Oh.
So they got a bunch of Spartans to come out and fight in a war. So I used the actual king. It was a Leonidas, but not the one that's famous in the 300 story. It's a one that was later on. It's like Leonidas III or something like that.
Yeah, I read up a little bit on the Spartans too, and they're not IRL. They were not as interesting, or like, I don't know how to put this. Interesting group of people, but very, very strange to our moral values, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, historically, yeah, they were a bunch of like ruthless overlords of a large slave population.
Yeah.
The reason they're all warriors is because they have so many slaves that they needed to be. So no, it's not a very nice history.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because they're all warriors, a lot more of them were dying than other city-states in Greece. So there was actually a very significant decline in Spartan population as there were more and more wars in Greece.
Yeah, there was also like a slightly more powerful group of women, right? Because if I remember correctly, there was like a lot of widows that then had some political leverage because they like inherited a lot of the like land that their husbands left or something to the degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, women did have more rights in Sparta than other parts of Greece. Small token compared to where civil rights are in the modern age, but yes.
Yeah, interesting places.
Thank you for listening. This show is sponsored by Darren. If you'd like to sponsor the show too and get episodes a week early, go to patreon.com/settingthestage.